Well, it's another episode here with Wake Up with Casey. And today I want to talk more about traumas, abuse, and, how do you overcome that? How do you heal from that? How do you even know, you know, when you're a child, you experience trauma, but you don't remember it? And the cycles and the patterns that go on from generation. And today I have two special guests joining us today who are authors of Healing Begins with Us. Please welcome Janine Weaver and Ronnie Techinor. Hello, ladies.
Good.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
It is an honor and a pleasure. And you're an author of Healing Begins with Us. How did that go about with both of you?
Go
Well,
ahead, Jen.
well, it's something that I actually have thought about for a while, writing a book about our family of origin. And Ronnie and I started talking about this a number of years ago. And I said, our story, we've been told as I progressed in counseling that our story is very unique because of the roles that we played in our family. Typically, I was the scapegoat, uh, and my sister Ronnie was the hero. And normally, those roles, those people are going to be at odds their whole lives. They never become friends. And so the fact that we forged a very strong bond and friendship as young adults, as we were beginning our lives, getting married and having our first children, um, we we felt that it was a very important story that needed to be told. And so we decided to write this book together and to focus on our relationship and how we helped each other to heal, and how forging such a strong friendship and bond as sisters really helped incredibly accelerate our healing process.
Yes.
So, what is your story? I mean, there, we all experience some form of abuse in childhood. And, you know, from my understanding, looking back at history and time periods of the way things were, how, you know, people were raised and whatnot, it, they don't realize what they're doing was harmful. They're just following a program, a belief system that's been passed down. Would would that be safe to say that that's how it was with you growing up in childhood?
I would say to a certain extent that is true. We grew up in a home with multiple, what they now call adverse childhood experiences, right? With different kinds of trauma. So the key ones for us were addiction in our dad, abuse that we experienced at the hands of our parents, and mental illness struggles that our parents had. And so all of those came together to create the traumas that we experience, right? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We do recognize that this is intergenerational, that our parents had their own traumas. They did share, some of their backgrounds with us, how they were raised. And you're right, at the time that our parents were raised, just for most people, just keeping your child alive, right? Getting them through school, like that was the bar for being a good parent. So we know that in some ways they were passing on what they got to us in an almost automatic way. But we also so we have compassion for them in that way, for what they experience and their own traumas. But we do still hold them accountable because they on some level knew that what they were doing was not right, because they would never do it in front of other people, not even family members. They didn't do these things in front of their parents or their siblings or good friends, right? There was a front that they put out in the world there. We're a close, warm, loving, happy family. And then there was the reality of what was happening behind closed doors. So that's how I would respond to your question, right? There certainly was an intergenerational component.
Mhm.
There's an energy that they were carrying that they probably didn't fully understand. But there also are ways in which it seemed clear to us that they knew that they could have done better, because they
Right.
hid a lot of what they did.
Mhm.
And you hear that's mainly how most dysfunctional families behave and operate.
Right.
You know, and some of them, you know, go to church and it's all, but then when they get out, it's a total opposite behavior.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's very common for in families with dynamics like ours, right, related to addiction and abuse and mental illness, for there to be people just living in denial, right? Like I said, we told ourselves we were this warm, close, loving, happy family, and we weren't. And it wasn't until, as Jenny said, we were in our late 20s and we had gotten married and we were having our first children, that we, in our desire to be good parents ourselves, we said, okay, and everybody does this, right? Even if you had great parents, everybody has something where they say, well, I'm never going to do that my parents did to me. I hated that. And conversely, the things that you want to imitate. So we were having those kinds of conversations. And we found that there were a lot of things on the I'm never going to do that side of the ledger, that there was a lot of pain there. And so that's when we really began to unpack what happened to us and kind of break through that denial, that there was nothing wrong, that everything was fine, that, you know, it wasn't a problem. There were no problems in our family. Or if there were problems, they were Jenny's fault. If Jenny could just get her act together, then, you know, as a scapegoat, right? We scapegoated her for any problems in the family. If she just get her act together, then everything would be fine. So that's, you know, those are the dysfunctional dynamics, some of the key ones that we lived with growing up that are very common for people who grew up in families like ours.
Well, what were some of the words spoken, you know, to you two growing up? You know, like you're stupid, you're, you know, you don't know nothing.
You know, it actually was more subtle than that. Our mother actually congratulated herself on the fact that she never called us stupid. She never used that word, but she did things to make us look and feel stupid. And Jenny, I think you probably can speak better to some of the things that mom and dad said to you over the years in terms of the emotional abuse.
Sure. You know, there was, you know, they made a point of telling us, they loved us. They made a point of, when we were very little, tucking us in. But that kind of went to the wayside as we became older. They certainly used words like lazy, and you know, if you weren't moving fast enough, there was a tremendous amount of berating, a consistent amount of screaming, and I mean screaming, yelling, cursing. So it wasn't, you know, if you broke something, it wasn't oh gosh, that's an accident. It was a huge explosion of, you know, telling you what an idiot you are for breaking, you know, dropping the ashtray, you know, and breaking it or whatever. We talk about different stories in the book. We use those stories mainly to illustrate what it felt like, to give you a snapshot of the dynamics that were occurring on a regular basis. And it was typically, you know, the explosions would come if, you know, we weren't moving fast enough with doing the dishes, or, you know, or cleaning the house, or whatever task it was that we were given. And we started doing the dishes at age 5. So, you know, it wasn't a family, you know, effort. It was the 3 of us kids. It was our job, you know, to divvy up all the household chores. But it wasn't even that. It was just that. I mean, if they needed to release tension or their anger, they found an excuse to blow up and berate you and to beat you. Right. And some of the things that we were beaten for were absolutely ridiculous. And we knew that at the time. I mean, there were, as we got 7, 8, 9, you know, there were moments where I'm like, I don't deserve this, and I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of crying. So that kind of conditioning, because you're conditioned, you're in these roles, you know, from childhood, from as your brain is forming, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, you're not capable of critical thinking at that time. You're literally just brainwashed that this is the way it is. But I do remember having moments of, this is so unfair. I don't deserve this. And that kind of abuse teaches you to, one, not trust yourself, not trust your perceptions, because you're being told that you're a terrible child and you're just so awful. And if you weren't so awful, I wouldn't have to beat you. But in, as you're developing reasoning skills, you're thinking, what the heck did I do? How, you're bewildered. And then also the other facet of it is you're being taught to dissociate from your body. You're being taught to ignore your pain, that you didn't, you don't have pain. You didn't, it's this whole, well, I didn't mean to hurt you, therefore you're not hurt. And including the beatings, it was, there was no apology. There was no, I went too far, I shouldn't have done that. There was never an acknowledgement of responsibility or error on their part. They were infallible in the whole way that they treated us. And we were always made to feel we were wrong.
Mhm.
And wouldn't you also agree that, it sends, especially when you're a child growing up and you're like, oh, but I love you. And then next thing you know, you're getting beaten. Like
Yeah.
that sends a confusion of what love is.
Absolutely. Yes. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So it certainly is no coincidence that kids who grow up in those environments are more likely to end up in abusive relationships because they confuse love with violence. Right?
Or mental abuse or emotional abuse,
Right.
verbal
Right.
abuse.
Or they become doormats, right? Because we didn't really, one of the hallmarks of a home like ours, another dynamic is that the rules change all the time. So like you can imagine that if you're being berated and beaten, you're highly motivated to find out what the rules are and follow them so you can keep yourself safe. But the
Absolutely.
rules keep changing. And so there's a lot of fear, right? There's a lot of fear just as a baseline. But you're just always trying to take the temperature of the room and try to figure out, how can I keep you happy so that I don't get hurt? And so then there's a lot of people pleasing, being a doormat, letting people walk all over you. That's very, very common for people who have grown up with these kinds of dynamics. So you're right. There are all kinds of ways in which relationships and moving forward can be affected. Just the fact that another dynamic in families like ours is isolation, right? They don't want anybody to know what's really going on in the family, and so you get the message early on you can't talk about it. And then your parents don't trust you to have too many close relationships because they're afraid you might reveal something. So they keep you pulled back, right?
Ooh, isn't that narcissistic in a way?
Yes, it is. I mean, we're there to meet their needs. So that's definitely, emotional abuse and narcissism is certainly part of that. But then there's this isolation so that, as kids, we didn't get to, it's this very odd thing where you, as Jenny said, you get conditioned and this is kind of normal. This is the way your life is, but you sort of know that not everybody is this way. But because you're isolated, you don't get to see a lot of other families up close. You don't get to really make the connections you need to say, this is wrong and I need to reject this and get out of here as fast as possible. And, so you end up being sort of trapped in it. Many people their whole lives. There are a lot of people who grow up with the kind of dynamics that we experience who will never, ever come to the realization their parents were addicts, that what they experienced was abuse, that there was anything wrong with it. They just know that they're in a lot of pain their entire lives, and they don't know what to do about it, how to get rid of it, how to manage it. So as Jenny said, the fact that she and I were able to come together and kind of break through the denial and chart a healthier path forward, we think of that as a miracle. It's a lot of people suffer their whole lives and don't really know
And they're still
why they're in pain.
they're stuck in the past. They're reliving everything, and it does change, because I talk about emotional energetic traumas. And being a woman, we bring life into this earth. So whatever we're experiencing, being pregnant, that unborn child is going through it too and has no idea.
Right. Absolutely.
And then you get into this earth and then you're compounded with even more. And then you grow up as an adult and you don't understand, why does this keep happening to me? Why am I attracting this? What's wrong with me? You don't realize that you got this energy that even changed the biochemistry in your body, in your development.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny that you know use that question. What's wrong with me? One of the early chapters in our book is called "What the hell's the matter with you," which is a question our dad used to always ask us. What the hell's the matter with you? Why did you do whatever? Right? Why did you do that? And that's it, right? And we say sometimes we still say, "What the hell's the matter with us?" Right?
Yeah.
Why are we feeling this way, or why are we experiencing this? Because the truth is, I mean, we've been on this recovery journey for several decades now. The truth is, you are always on it, right? I mean, we are living beautiful, happy lives now, but this, like you say, energetically and in particular, you just don't get rid of this stuff completely,
Right.
right? You learn how to manage it. We learned how to break the cycle and do things differently in our relationships with our husbands and our relationships with our children. But we didn't protect them from everything. And we still find ourselves think, wow, I thought I already learned this lesson, or, I thought I was past this. And it just, as you said, the energy of it stays a long time. It's easier to sort things intellectually than it is to really reprogram the energy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like to use alchemy. You transmute it
Mm-hmm. Right.
to where it doesn't come back again.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a process through that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start, once you deal with it, then that dissolves, but then you open space for something new,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
better.
We talk about it as a layer of an onion. It really is. You're peeling away layers at a time. You are definitely changing your energy as you're addressing each layer and then releasing it and healing it. But it's
an ongoing journey, honestly.
does not just, okay, it's been 35 years, I've arrived. It's not like that.
Mm-mm. Because there's soul essence of things that, I believe in past lives. Like the soul never dies.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes on a different form.
Mm-hmm.
I look at one of my greatest mentors. You probably know of him, Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yes. We love it.
He said it perfectly. He goes, your soul is like a ghost. This is the machine. The body that you're in is the machine that operates.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And
that's
it's connected to something, a greater intelligence that keeps your heart beating, and you don't even have to think about it. Keeps your lungs exhaling and inhaling. You don't have to think about it. So the soul has been around probably thousands of years and experienced so much and remembers so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're carrying some of these traumas, not just ancestral, but on your own, your soul journey.
Right.
And to be in this lifetime on this earth, it's discovering that so you can be here now in the present and live life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had some moments along the way in our healing journey where I've actually had this feeling like something was shifting for me. I was healing something, and I could feel the generational connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going back through my ancestral lineage. It's a very powerful feeling when you can tap in.
Because, on my spiritual awakening and journey, it's like the scarcity, poverty, and there was physical abuse. There was even sexual abuse. There was it keeps, and I'm like, wow, how far back does this go?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look up history of how things were, even in the beginning of our creation, there's a misconception about that, and some deceit about that. So I see how this program has been going along all this time, and it really affected women mostly. And I find that fascinating. I'm like, wow, women were suppressed. They didn't have a voice. They didn't they were sold, they were bought, they were beaten, they were more considered a piece of property. And I'm looking how it's that stuff still goes on today
Right.
in certain parts of the other country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And that was a big motivator for us to write this book together, was to help, most of us who are survivors of abuse, trauma, addiction, mental illness in our homes. We suffer in silence. We don't talk about it. Most people don't want to hear it because there's this huge umbrella of shame that is put on who is the innocent. You were an innocent child born into this. You did nothing wrong to deserve to be treated this way. You didn't sign up for abuse. And yet we put a gag on survivors and say, I'm not going to ask, and don't tell me. And so that was part of our motivation for writing this book together and we found for us, it was really another layer, lifting another layer from that onion, peeling that away, and realizing that we were both still carrying shame of what was done to us. And that was, and we want to help other people on their healing journey. And that meant telling part of our story and sharing honestly, yes, this is what we grew up with, this is what we survived, because we did not deserve to carry this shame. It was not our shame to carry. And that's really part of our message, is this is really a spiritual journey of healing and of learning to love, not just forgiveness of the people that harmed us, and loving them, loving ourselves, of self-love, of self-acceptance, and saying that I deserve to be loved for all of who I am. I deserve to stand in the light and be seen and be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times from the religious aspect, because I remember obey your parents, honor your mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, if a mother or father is beating the child and abusing the child, how can you honor and obey them?
I think the best way to honor someone is to step out of the cycle of abuse and stay out of range,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't honor them to continue to participate in the abuse with them, to allow them to dishonor themselves by abusing you. So for me, the most loving act that I actually did was to step out of range and stay out of range. I do not hate my parents. I love them. Was I angry? Of course, I was angry for the mountain of pain that they caused in my life. But I certainly have forgiven them, I believe, as much as is humanly possible. And I want for them spiritual healing. I want for them to find peace. But it is not my responsibility. I can't give that to them. I can't do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get healthy. I had to heal and love myself. And by doing that, I am hopefully setting an example to invite them to heal and love themselves.
So how is your parents still alive?
Yes, they're both still alive, but we have not had contact with them in many years.
Wow. That
We
took a
also-
lot of courage to just because they brought you into this earth, doesn't mean that you have to have that relationship.
We certainly exhausted every avenue, and made every possible effort to reach them, to explain to them why we could no longer stay in this abusive relationship. We had to step out of it. And I was really the one pushing that. I was the one that lived closest to them, and I could not continue to participate. And I knew that I could not sacrifice my children to those dynamics. They were trying to create those dynamics with my first two children. And I'm the one that said to Ronnie, I'm out. I cannot stay in this any longer. And that was after that was at the point that we decided to attempt an intervention with my dad to see if we could at least break through some of the denial and talk about the addiction. And that was not successful for him.
No.
But it was the turning point for both of us.
It was-
Say we deserve to heal. We deserve to be at peace. Our families deserve to heal and be at peace. And it starts with us.
Right. So it took me longer to get there, as Jenny said, because my role in the family is the hero, right? My job was to make the family look good, right? Be a super achiever and all those things. So I was sort of the good kid, the shining star, and I was trying to keep the family together. I was trying to say, wait, I can talk to them. I can move them. I can make a rational argument and they will listen to me, and I can control it. I can do it. I can. It was a fool's
Oh,
errand.
the people pleaser
Yeah,
syndrome.
well, also control, right? I can control anything. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to be the peacemaker, and I did that for a good 6 to 12 months, as Jenny kept saying, I can't keep coming back. I can't. And it was seeing what they were doing to their grandchildren, right? She had 2 daughters at that time and I had 1. And they had already identified a scapegoat in the next generation. It was Jenny's second daughter. She wasn't even 2 years old, and they were already treating her abominably. So we couldn't do it. There were also issues of sexual abuse in our family, and we were very concerned about the safety of our children. So it was very difficult. We do have a podcast ourselves, and one of our episodes is called Forgiveness Without Reconciliation, where we talk about this, how, as Jenny said, we've forgiven them as much as we can as human beings. We love them. We hope all good things for them, including healing. But reconciliation requires 2 parties working honestly to make a relationship better, and we could not get them to do that. In fact, if you know anything about the dynamics in abusive relationships, as we tried to pull away, they escalated and got out of control in terms of the abusive things that they did. So they made it really easy for us, right? As we tried to pull away, they just showed us exactly why. And in fact, over the years, we've had times where we said, well, maybe we can reach out and just have the most superficial of relationships. Let's just, how are you? Right? Once a month, can I talk to you on the phone and say, how are you? And every time we had those thoughts, they would reach out to grab us and hurt us in a new way. And we would go, oh, okay, that's the universe telling us, nope, your plan is good. Stay where you are. Yeah. So that's the other piece, as Jenny said, is that we want people to recognize that it can be the most loving thing, not just for you, but for your other family members, to walk away.
And have a peace of mind finally, and freedom.
Yes.
Oh my God, freedom.
Yes.
Freedom to heal fully.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And once you heal, that freedom, that experience of freedom, it's like getting a piece of your true essence back, your power back.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
You are standing up for yourself. You are standing up and saying, I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be cherished. And if I am the one that needs to love and cherish myself in the ways that I did not receive as a child, then that is of immense importance and value. And that's what we've learned to do. We've learned to parent ourselves, nurture and love ourselves and each other.
Mm-hmm.
We've more than sisters and friends. We've kind of mothered each other at times and been there for each other in the ways that we did not receive that as children.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and would it be safe to say along your journeys that you discovered that love was inside you all along?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We were denying, I think, fully who we were. And I refer to it as being hijacked. I mean, we were hijacked from the on. Our true identities were ignored, and we were forced to play roles. We were forced to be what our parents needed us to be, to hide the mental illness, the addiction, the abuse. Mm-hmm. And so what we've been doing for the last 30 years is reclaiming who we are fully, mm-hmm. and giving ourselves permission to embrace all of who we are and let our inner guidance, our higher self, our intuition guide us.
When did you discover your intuition? Sorry.
I would say that we were in hypervigilance. So our intuition was heightened from probably toddlerhood on. I mean, we are both highly empathic, highly intuitive people. Ronnie doesn't accept it as openly.
I have a harder time seeing myself that way, but
it's there. I have been reading the room and reading people since I was a young child, and that's how I survived and tried to avoid more explosions. but yeah, it is something that I think I use in a healthy way. I try to honor people's privacy because I'm very good at reading people, and I intentionally try not to read people unless I'm given permission or asked, but
Well, I'll give you permission to read me. I like to know more about myself.
but that's something that Ronnie and I actually have done together. Part of and we talk about that in the book. We started experimenting with intuitive seminars, like going to animal communication training weekend together, and working with Danielle McKinnon, and just really exploring and expanding our intuitive working with our soul guides. And we found that we're really good at it, and we love it. We love it. It gave us a lot of joy. So it's things like that, going to Reiki healing training together, and just accepting who we are and what speaks to us and what makes us feel excited, or makes our heart, I like to say, makes my heart sing, and that's what we do, a lot of those things together.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say too, just to go back to, when did we know we were intuitive? As Jenny said, we had a certain kind of intuition that a therapist would call hypervigilance, which is that, being on guard and trying to keep yourself safe by being able to read what's going on. But also, we kind of touched on this earlier, being in the kind of situation that we were, the home environment that we were constantly told that what we were seeing and experiencing wasn't happening to us. Like Jenny said, I didn't hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you. Therefore, you are not hurt. Dad's not an alcoholic. His drinking is not a problem. Like all these things that you can see with your eyes that are happening, you're being told are not happening. And so that's part of the denial. And so what that does is it as Jenny said, we had to learn to trust ourselves again, because we're seeing things and things that we know to be true, right? But yet we're told they're not true. And so we had to kind of, unravel those patterns and then figure out how to reconnect with our intuition in an authentic way. So that's a kind of damage, if you will, that you don't always hear people talk about. In terms of the dynamics associated with families like ours, is that people really don't know how to trust themselves in many cases, because they've been told all these things are true that aren't true. In fact, sometimes the opposite of what they're told is actually true. And so you end up thinking, what's wrong with me, right? I must be nuts, because this is what I'm seeing, but people are telling me this is happening over here. And
seeing, hearing, feeling.
Right. All of those things. So you
and
have
I know
to
being, like animals and young children, I think up to the age of 7, they're in their purest spiritual, like they see that spiritual invisible realm. Animals definitely, because they're not told otherwise, like, oh, you're just seeing things, you're hallucinating, you're crazy, or and I find that like disheartening, but everyone has gone through it.
Yeah.
Every one of us have gone through it. When we're young, we do see more, hear more, feel more, until the day we're told, oh no, you didn't feel that, or you didn't see that, you didn't hear that. You're imagining that. Your imagination is going crazy again.
And you start doubting yourself.
Now it's like what intuition, like the C's, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, what ones did you like are dominant in using?
So for me, it took me a while to figure this out, but for me, I have just a sense of knowing, like I just know something. And so then I have, I'm an academic, right? I'm a college professor. And so I live in the world of the rational mind. And so this stuff how can I just know something, right? And so it's very easy for me to talk myself out of it, even though it's like, I know that to be true, or I know that this is what's happening. And so that's where Jenny says, I've struggled a little more to accept the information that comes to me intuitively. I'm getting better about that, but I think it's because I'm not seeing things or hearing things that would be a little harder to ignore. But the sense of just knowing something, it's like, oh no, I just made that up. That's not, that's not real. So it was easier for me to kind of dismiss that information that came into me intuitively that way.
Yeah.
Well, I would look at you then and say, wow, that's fascinating that you know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figured it out. I figured out why I was so resistant to, because I would know something and I would wait until I would see something or hear something before I would say it. Right. Because
Get that validation and confirmation, like,
Right.
Yes.
I go through that same thing. So I feel you on that one.
Okay, good.
I do. It's like, how did I know this? Like, how? That's weird. Like, I
Mhm.
knew this, but I also feel more. Sometimes I hear and sometimes I see. It
Mhm.
just comes, this part, that, not all together at the same time, just here
Yep.
and there kind of thing. And then my channeling, because I channel ancient civilization, highly evolved beings, if you want to call them extraterrestrial. I channel, and that language, that the native, it's almost like the lost language.
Oh,
And
interesting.
to me, it's very intense, and I can tell by the frequency, the vibration of what level, what kind of being.
Mhm.
And then I've learned the masculine and feminine energy that comes through me. But the language is like, wow, I wish I could speak Spanish and French and Italian like that. But it's fascinating, and it's like another journey. Like, I'm more curious. When I started this channeling, I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to get out of the church and the religion, because that's when I got more clarity, more understanding of what was truly going on. I'm like, wow, we have it all wrong. Like, everyone wake up, please, just wake up. Because then there would be more harmony, there would be more peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I had to, someone said something, it's like everyone's on their own spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you have to love them where they're at and let them go.
Yes.
Because all they're going to do is keep you're trying to go up here, they're still here. You don't want to go back down here. You want to keep it's evolving and growing and expanding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of our life experience. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We're here to grow and I think it's very simple. We're here to grow in love and compassion and kindness. That's our ultimate goal. So yeah. So I'm very similar to Ronnie in how I receive information. It's mostly unknowing, but I do feel things a lot in my body when receiving information, and then I usually get confirmations with visuals.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And it's fascinating because it got more interesting when I went to massage school and became a massage therapist. I'm retired now, but it was, wow. Like, energy, I'm into the Reiki energy work. You could heal through that. I'm even now learning about alchemy. So I find that it's like connecting the dots. Like, things that you're drawn to that show up to present itself to you to help you,
Mm-hmm.
and then being like arts and, doing this podcast now, and, video, and having my own talk show. It's like, I said, like, I want to do that. Like, when I was in my teens, and totally, like, went in, went out the other, 1 year, in 1 year and out the other. And I just went on with my life. I didn't, like, now it's all coming back to me, making more sense. Like, oh, now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that how your journey has been? Like, recognizing in that, being that intuitive, and then the healings that, the, like, flashback memories or something. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Hold up a second. Oh, so that's why this happened. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had a number of threads. I mean, part of what we've done, particularly, in the early part of our healing, we did, we tried conventional counseling and 12-step groups like Al-Anon and adult children of alcoholics. We read lots and lots of books, everything we could get our hands on. And all those things got us to a certain point. And then we realized that, okay, we've kind of processed things intellectually and emotionally. There is this spiritual wound that needs to be healed. And so I think you started us off with the Reiki training, Jenny, but we've kind of just moved forward from that. Like, we'll just see something and go, we have to do this. And so I'll just call her up and I'll say, hey, we're going to go to this workshop on this thing here because we just need to do it. And we just trust that that's, but you should tell your story about the Reiki, how you got us into Reiki.
Oh, the Reiki. Well, when I was a student as a nurse practitioner, I had a wonderful community health nursing clinical instructor who worked with hospice. She worked with hospice care, and she also had her own Reiki practice. And that was my introduction to Reiki. We were actually doing research papers on energy healing and the different modalities, including prayer. And that was one of my research papers, was talking about the scientific data that showed that these different healing modalities, including prayer, had tremendous positive impacts on patients that received them in a variety of clinical settings. So she, toward the end of our clinical rotation that semester, she took us to her Reiki, to hospice, the unit that she was working with, and also her Reiki practice, and asked for a volunteer. And out of the 12 students, nobody wanted to volunteer. So I was starting to struggle with headaches. So I thought, okay, I'll go. And the experience I had was profound, to say the least. She started on the crown chakra, talked about how there was a tremendous amount of activity there. She was describing how I have trouble turning my mind off. I discussed that it feels like I have trouble sleeping, and I did. I was living on like 3 hours sleep at that time, and had been all through graduate school. And so she discussed these things. I'm like, how in the world could she possibly know this just by having her hand a few inches above my head? Same thing with my third eye. She said, there's tremendous activity here. She said, you live in your crown, but also your third eye. She said, you are constantly reading people, reading the room. I mean, she's discussing how I operate in the world, right? Day in and day out. I'm like, how could she know this? She got to my throat and said, this is very cold. This is tremendously blocked. This is an energy block that's been there, she said, many years. And she said, I need to send energy to here to try and release some of this energy block. And as she did, and this is back in the days when we were taught, you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. So Ronnie and I were not criers. Yeah. The tears started to just flow like a river, seriously, in front of my classmates. But I felt this tremendous heat. And I felt it was like there was a vice around my neck, and I wasn't aware of it, but it felt like a vice was around my neck. And as the heat started to flow, the vice started to release. And then it just felt like a weight was lifted. And again, I wasn't sobbing, but the tears would not stop. So she stayed there for, I don't know how long. And then I was like trembling, not like shaking, not like cold, but my body was just kind of quivering,
vibrating.
Oh my gosh.
Vibrating,
yeah. Integrating, migrate. Yeah. I felt things shifting I'd never experienced before. When she got to my heart, same thing. She said, I feel a tremendous blockage here. It feels very heavy, very tight, very cold. She said, I'm going to need to send some energy here as well. And I'm like, go for it. And it's the same thing. I immediately felt this tremendous tightness in my chest, this pressure, this just miserable feeling that I was not aware that I was carrying around with me. I'd lived with it for so long. And again, as the energy heated in, more tears flowing, my whole body is doing the vibrating thing. And then it felt like an elephant was lifted off my chest. Got to my abdomen, said, same thing about you've had years of stomach problems. She said, it feels like there's been a lot of, your stomach is inflamed, feels like you've been vomiting a lot. Yep. Every time the energy would get so ugly in the house, I would vomit. So I vomited a lot as a child. So here she is going through my body, telling me all these things. And as she's doing it, the tears are flowing like a river. Same thing with the GI tract. Talked about the blockages in the GI tract. It was amazing. By the time she finished, and she probably worked on me for, I don't know, a half hour, maybe a little bit longer. And I felt like a puddle, and I couldn't. But when she was finally done with me, I felt this just immense pressure leave my body and a lightening of the body. And I felt amazing, and the headache was gone. But and I told her, I said, I don't know why I'm crying. I said, I'm not a crier. I just, she said, it's energy releasing. It's okay. And she said, and by the way, I recommend that you have some more treatments.
Say what?
She said, I recommend that you have some more Reiki treatments because, there's some more energy that I feel like needs to be shifted. I was, okay. So I knew, I didn't know what was going on in my body. I had just been working on this research paper, and I'm like, okay, I need to find out more about this. But it took me a dozen, more than that, right, Ronnie? Maybe a dozen years.
More like 15. Anyway.
15 before the timing finally, because I believe we were meant to do this together. Yeah. And so I was looking for Reiki training that would have continuing education credits for my nurse practitioner license. And I just called up Ronnie one day and said, Ronnie, I found this great Reiki training in Detroit. We could meet there. We'll get a hotel. You and I can hang out and have a sister's weekend, after I go through the training. And she said, Reiki training? Well, I'll go with you. What's Reiki? That was how we started.
I had no clue, right? The whole energetic piece was like the last piece for us as we were, well, we're not done, obviously, right? The onion is still being peeled, but that was, that's another thing that we want to raise awareness about, is that there is this enormous spiritual and energetic wound that most people don't talk about when they talk about recovering from childhood trauma. Right. And so, we go through all the different things that we tried in the book, but, we say, it doesn't matter to us if people try Reiki or animal communication or any of the other things that we did. It's that they develop the trust in themselves to go, oh, I need to do that.
I want to do that.
Right. Whatever it is, that they let themselves be called and that they follow that inner guidance. So
what's being called to you with your soul to help you heal? It's trust, whatever that is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Which it sounds like is what you're talking about in your own journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The emotional energetic traumas. And that's why I talk about history, science, spirituality, the limited beliefs, the programming, the emotional energetic traumas.
Yes.
Because once you heal from that, it just it changes and transforms your whole perspective of life. Mm-hmm. and living your best life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the freedom of that, and then you're being your true authentic self.
Yes.
Yes. That's what matters to us now, right? I mean, some of the things that we share in our book, they are very personal stories. It was re-traumatizing to tell some of them. And yet we felt like this is what we experienced. And we know that there are people out there that may read it and feel like, gee, I don't know if this is really relevant to me, to my background. It's like we wanted to focus on not just what happened to us, but the feelings, so people could resonate with the feelings. Even if you didn't do the same things or have the same things happen to you that we did, you'll recognize the feelings, right? The vibration of it, the energy, the emotion that you will understand and connect with. And so that's, and we would never have been able to step out in that way. I won't say without shame, because I think that that's an ongoing issue, right? But to stand enough in our power and our truth to say, we must talk about this because we're convinced it will help other people. Yes. And therefore we're willing to move through whatever emotions come up as we talk about what happened to us, in the hopes that it will help other people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, earlier you were mentioning about, having to, what can I do? And then reading the room and everything. You're also in survival energy mode.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think majority of human beings today are operating on that And that's what's causing a lot of sickness and
Mhm.
disease, because you change that biochemistry, and then it's like being an addict to being under that survival mode 24/7.
It feels normal. And so
Yeah, it becomes normal. And one of my other good mentors, Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Mhm.
Yes.
We follow him as well.
Yeah.
Greg Braden, Dr. Bruce Lipton,
Yes.
they're my three musketeers.
Yes.
You know, I love those men. And they
We
do,
do too.
and that's why, earlier I mentioned, it's like, the woman is the creator of life, that brings life into this
Mhm.
world. And what we feel and experience, it's energy, emotion, energy in motion. And it does go through our children.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And we owe it to ourselves to wake up for the future generation, because a lot of these younger generations now, that's why they're suffering.
Yeah.
And bless their souls, it's not their fault.
Well, we've talked a lot about denial as being a key dynamic in households like ours. And so the question can become, well, how do you break through the denial? And I think a really key question that people can ask themselves is, are your family relationships a source of ongoing pain? Right? If you walk away from interactions with your family members, parents, siblings, grandparents, whomever, and you don't feel that great about yourself, right? More often than not, there's a decent chance that there's some trauma in your background.
Mhm.
Or you dread going to see your parents
Yeah,
for
right.
the holidays, and, or the family, because that fear of, oh, is someone going to make a scene? Is it going to be this? Is it?
Yeah.
That's a sign right there.
Yes,
Definitely.
totally agree.
And is it worth it? And so many families do that. And then there's, some of them wind up making it on the news. And I'm like, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not so much denial, but I think that a lot of people are not even aware, because it's so subconsciously, deeply rooted.
Mhm.
They don't recognize it.
Right.
It's not so much denial. It's just they don't recognize that is an issue. That is part of the dysfunction, the program, the limited belief. And it affects relationships, the finances, every aspect of our lives, if we don't wake up to realize this is part of the root of the problem. When there's a problem, there's a solution.
Completely agree.
Yes.
And I'm so proud of you two. And you are truly amazing.
Well,
And
thank you.
thank you for everything that you do and continue to do to help others.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
It does.
And I love you. You're beautiful.
This has been such a fun
you.
conversation to have with you. Thank you so much.
Really
Well,
appreciate
these are the kind of conversations that I love having, that needs to be spoken.
Mhm.
Yes.
Someone watching this is probably thinking already, like, wait a minute, hold up a second. They're starting to remember questioning. Dr. Joe Vitale, ask a question everything. That's what my journey, because I was in an abusive marriage, the second one. And I was like, is this it in life? Is this all there is? Because I don't want to be here then.
Yeah.
Right.
But if there's a grass is greener on the other side from where I'm standing, then show me the truth.
Yeah.
That's when I was adamant. That's when I was like at my breaking point, and I just shouted out to the universe, like, you better show me the truth now, because I'm done with this bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when things started showing up and revealing itself to me. Dr.
Yeah.
Joe Vitale, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Dr.
Yeah.
Joe Dispenza, and so many others.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
The poor teach the poor to be poor. Middle class teach the middle class to be middle class. The rich teach the rich to be rich. What category did you grow up in? And that was an eye opener for me. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was just one piece of the puzzle.
No, you're right. We have to think about these things in the context of the way we live as a whole, right? I mean, I'm a sociologist by training, so my big question is, why are we letting families do this to kids?
Yeah.
Why are we allowing this? We know this is happening. Why do we let it keep happening?
Yeah.
That's the big question to ask. Why don't we do something about this, something meaningful about this? So people don't have to worry about moving through recovery.
And how do we get started? Where do we start?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the research on families that have where the parents are abusing their children show that it happens a lot due to stress, right? In particular, economic stress. There's also the intergenerational component, right? So I don't want to oversimplify, but supporting families so the parents are not struggling to try to do everything they need to do to keep body and soul together and a roof over their children's house heads and so on. That's a place to start.
Yeah.
So, but these are the big questions to be asking. I love that you're doing that.
Thank you. Well, ladies, it's definitely, once again, a true honor and a pleasure to have this experience with you and being on this show. I thank you so much. And I put all the information down below for your book and how they can contact you for more information. So I wish you the best of success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, there you go. You never know what I'm going to talk about on this show. And I look forward to having more of beautiful and amazing people such as Ronnie and Jamie to help you on your journey of healing and transformation. And makeup and skincare is provided by Pharmacy and jewelry provided by Pretty Bling Boutique. So stay tuned for the next episode of Wake Up with KC.